You are not trapped by bad luck. You are not trapped by bad choices. You are not trapped because you did not work hard enough. You are trapped because the system you live inside was engineered that way. And I already have the answer to the question in the title. John D. Rockefeller did not just build an oil company. He built a system so efficient, so self-protecting, and so legally embedded that even when the company was destroyed, the system survived. Not only survived, it multiplied. And the most unsettling part is this: you participate in it every single day, whether you want to or not. Let me show you how, but first understand this clearly. This is not a story about the past. This is a story about right now. Every gallon of fuel, every prescription drug, every digital platform, every corporate monopoly you interact with today follows a blueprint designed more than a century ago. And once you see that blueprint, you cannot unsee it. Here is the truth most history books never say out loud. Standard Oil was never the system. The method was the system, and methods do not die. They evolve. Now stay with me, because in the next few minutes I am going to walk you through exactly how one man quietly redesigned capitalism itself, and why no government, no revolution, and no innovation has ever been able to undo it. John Davidson Rockefeller was not born into power. He was born into control. His father was a traveling con artist. His mother was intensely religious, disciplined, and morally rigid. That combination matters more than people realize. Rockefeller learned two lessons very early in life. 1. Most people are disorganized, emotional, and inefficient. 2. Whoever brings order to chaos believes they are morally justified in doing so. This belief never left him. So when oil was discovered in Pennsylvania and the industry exploded into a frenzy of drillers, speculators, bankruptcies, and wild price swings, Rockefeller did not see opportunity in drilling. Drilling was chaos. Rockefeller hated chaos. He saw opportunity in controlling the calm center, refining the quiet, boring, unglamorous part where money was predictable. Rockefeller did not win because he was smarter than everyone else. He won because he chose the only position that could never lose. Everyone else chased oil out of the ground. Rockefeller positioned himself between the oil and the customer. That single decision changed everything. By controlling refining, Rockefeller could let others take the risk while he collected the certainty. But that was not enough, because as long as competitors existed, margins were thin. So Rockefeller asked a dangerous question. What if competition itself was the problem? This is where the system begins. Most businesses control one step. Rockefeller decided to control all of them: barrels, transportation, storage, distribution, sales. Every dollar that once went to someone else now stayed inside his operation. And suddenly something strange happened. Rockefeller could sell oil cheaper than anyone else and still make money. His competitors could not. That is not competition. That is inevitability. Once a company controls every step, the market stops being a battlefield and becomes a funnel, and funnels only flow one direction. Competitors thought they were fighting Rockefeller. They were not. They were fighting math. Lower costs meant Rockefeller could drop prices below survival levels for everyone else. And he did, relentlessly, quietly, legally. This was not brute force. This was slow suffocation. One by one, refineries collapsed or surrendered, and Rockefeller always offered the same deal: sell now or disappear later. This was not cruelty in his mind. It was efficiency, and efficiency to Rockefeller was moral. Once Rockefeller perfected vertical control, he moved sideways. He bought competitors not to expand capacity, but to remove alternatives. This is critical. He did not want more oil. He wanted fewer choices. Because fewer choices mean pricing power, and pricing power means permanence. Within a few short years, he controlled nearly all refining capacity in the country. Not because he drilled more, but because he eliminated everyone else. Rockefeller did not dominate oil by producing more. He dominated oil by making alternatives disappear. Now comes the part most people misunderstand. The government eventually noticed. Public anger exploded. And in the early 1900s, the Supreme Court ordered Standard Oil broken apart. Most people believed this was the end. It was not. It was the upgrade. Because Rockefeller had already solved the problem decades earlier. He separated control from visibility. He invented the structure that still rules the world today. The holding entity, one owner, many companies, shared influence, distributed blame. The breakup did not destroy his wealth. It multiplied it. You are not trapped because Rockefeller won. You are trapped because everyone copied him. Once the method worked, it became doctrine. Energy, banking, pharmaceuticals, Technology media, every dominant industry, adopted the same architecture. Control the middle, eliminate alternatives, shape regulation, appear fragmented, remain unified, and the system locked into place. At this point, you should be asking a very uncomfortable question. If the system survived its own destruction, what chance do we have against it now? The harder governments try to break monopolies, the stronger monopolies become. That sounds backwards, but Rockefeller understood it perfectly. And once you understand why, you will realize why the system cannot be broken, only rearranged. When the Supreme Court ordered Standard Oil dismantled, the public celebrated. Newspapers declared victory. Politicians congratulated themselves. Citizens believed competition had been restored, but behind the scenes something extraordinary happened. Rockefeller owned shares in every new company, so when one monopoly became dozens of regional giants, Rockefeller did not lose control, he gained leverage. Each new company now competed outward, but coordinated inward. Breaking a monopoly does not destroy power. When ownership stays unified, it multiplies it. Prices stabilized, markets expanded, innovation accelerated, and Rockefeller's wealth surged. The system had passed its first stress test and emerged stronger. Most people believe regulation exists to protect consumers. Rockefeller believed something else. He believed regulation was a weapon if you controlled it. Small competitors fear regulation. Large integrated firms write regulation. Rockefeller pushed for standards, not because he feared oversight, but because he already met the standards and his competitors could not afford to. Regulation does not eliminate monopolies. It eliminates competitors who cannot afford compliance. And once regulation exists, entry barriers rise, capital requirements increase, legal complexity explodes, small firms die quietly, the dominant players remain. Rockefeller did not bribe regulators. He did something far more effective. He made regulators dependent on the industry. Advisors, experts, committees, standards boards, industry insiders became rule makers, and suddenly regulation stopped being adversarial. It became collaborative. This is regulatory capture, not corruption alignment. And once alignment exists, the system stabilizes. Power lasts longer when it is hidden. Rockefeller's greatest invention was not Standard Oil. It was the structure behind it, a parent entity that owned many operating companies, separate names, separate regions, shared strategy. If one failed, the system survived. If one was attacked, the rest adapted. This is why modern corporations look the way they do. Holding companies, subsidiaries, shell entities, jurisdictional optimization. It is not accidental, it is evolutionary. Technology companies do not appear monopolistic because services are free. Energy companies appear fragmented because brands differ. Banks appear regulated because paperwork is endless, but ownership, coordination, and incentives remain consolidated. The system learned how to appear competitive while remaining unified. Visibility was the weakness, so Rockefeller removed it. Rockefeller gave away massive sums of money, hospitals, universities, medical research, public health. And people misunderstood what that meant. They thought it was redemption, it was reinforcement. Philanthropy does not reduce power, it redirects perception. And it does something else even more important, it shapes the future. Who gets funding determines what gets studied. What gets studied determines what becomes truth. What becomes truth shapes policy. This is not conspiracy, this is structure. Every election cycle promises reform. Every generation believes this time will be different, but the system does not sit in one office, it lives in legal frameworks, corporate charters, tax codes, compliance structures. Presidents come and go. The system stays. You cannot vote out a structure that does not depend on elections. This is why revolutions fail to dismantle it. They overthrow leaders. The system simply waits. The system works. It delivers cheap goods, fast logistics, stable supply chains, predictable outcomes. Rockefeller understood this. He knew people would tolerate concentration as long as life felt easier, and they do. That is why the system is not enforced by force. It is enforced by convenience. You think opting out is rebellion, but alternatives depend on the same infrastructure: payment processors, cloud hosting, logistics networks, advertising platforms. The system wraps around resistance and absorbs it. The system does not crush opposition, it monetizes it. At this point, the question is no longer can the system be broken. The real question is what do you do once you realize you are inside it. By now, you should see the outline clearly. Not a conspiracy, not a shadow cabal, not a single villain pulling strings, a structure, and structures do not require intent to function. They only require incentives. This is why the system survives outrage, reform, and collapse. The system does not need your consent. It only needs your participation. You do not wake up each morning choosing monopoly. You choose convenience. You choose affordability. You choose speed. And the system rewards those choices by tightening its grip. This is how extraction happens without pain. Most people imagine exploitation as something obvious: higher prices, lower wages, visible oppression. Rockefeller designed something far more effective: extraction without visibility. When competition disappears, prices do not always rise. Sometimes they stabilize. Sometimes they fall. But profit margins increase because costs fall faster than prices. That difference, the invisible gap, is extraction, and it is massive. You are not being drained by higher prices. You are being drained by invisible efficiency gains you never share. The system concentrates wealth, not because it hates consumers, but because scale rewards ownership. The more centralized the system becomes, the fewer decision points exist. Fewer decision points mean fewer owners. Fewer owners mean concentration. This is not greed. This is math. People protest corporations, they boycott brands, they demand accountability, and nothing fundamentally changes because outrage targets behavior. The system is not behavior, it is structure. You cannot shame a structure into reforming itself. Structures respond only to incentives, and the incentives reward consolidation. Look across history: railroads, steel, telecommunications, energy, banking, technology. The pattern never changes. Many competitors, price wars, consolidation, oligopoly, then stability. Rockefeller did not invent this, he accelerated it. And once accelerated, it became the default path. The system does not just dominate markets, it becomes infrastructure. Once that happens, opting out becomes irrational. Not immoral, irrational. When a system becomes infrastructure, resistance becomes self. Harm and infrastructure always wins. People often ask what happens when it fails. It will not fail catastrophically, it will adjust. Consolidated systems bend, fragmented systems break. Rockefeller built something flexible. That was the genius. Once you understand the system, there are only 3 honest responses. 1. Denial. Pretend the system does not exist. Blame individuals. Chase motivation narratives. 2. Resistance. Fight consolidation. Support breakups. Advocate decentralization. 3. Understanding. This is not surrender. This is clarity. You cannot escape a structure, but you can stop being surprised by it. Understanding removes confusion, and confusion is where extraction is easiest. Rockefeller did not believe competition was evil. He believed it was inefficient, and inefficiency to him was sin. Whether you agree or not does not matter, because the world adopted his logic. The system rewards order, punishes fragmentation, and concentrates outcomes. That is the world you live in. Once you see it, you stop asking the wrong questions. You stop asking why this is unfair, and start asking how this is structured. That shift is power, awareness. The system survives because most people fight symptoms instead of structures. You no longer have to. John D. Rockefeller did not leave behind monuments. He left behind architecture, and architecture shapes behavior long after builders are gone. He died nearly a century ago, but the system he designed still concentrates, still consolidates, still extracts, still endures, and it will continue to do so, not because it is evil, but because it works. You were not meant to feel trapped. You were meant to feel comfortable, and that is why the system is so difficult to see. But now you have seen it, and once seen it cannot be unseen. John D. Rockefeller did not just build an empire, he built the world you live in. Welcome to the system.